So I'm curious if it's room.
Oh, in the past?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been to Mecca before.
I know, that's why I was asking you.
Good point. I'm a bad person to ask that question. Wait, that's the reason why you weren't asking it. Makes sense.
Because I know you haven't been with me.
And there are plenty of space in front. Feel free to sit in front.
Sounds like we're in a group.
It does. Or we could find something people.
Or we could just,
Hey, Nate.
or we could make groups of
We have an entire call. We're gonna
What'd you say?
quiz for comparative programming.
Oh, comparative.
Yeah, you started, so I think I'm gonna help him out.
I have Lisp and COBOL for that. The work. If you wait long enough, as long as you show up to class later, we'll give it to you.
Talk to them about
It's kind of like dude, just like the rest of us. Dust to dust, ashes to ash. Loud fan to loud fan. Dude, turn the fan on. I want to hear that bad boy. Other Nick, he was
Yes.
I just got moved from Wednesday.
Did it already start?
Yes,
Dan?
it has. Nice to meet you.
We didn't turn off the laptop. So this is...
7:10.
Alright, yeah. I mean, you're good for right now. The next time, we'll just redo it and go back over. Yeah, but for now, you don't need to do anything else.
That thing is.
Yeah, I see that.
So actually,
I see it. So I took photo of that. Probably.
Super slick.
Yeah, I think I would say
It weighs like 15 pounds. Unreal.
That one you gave chairs.
We're trying to raise it.
It lets you slide the seat forward.
Kind of like you, man. You're just too used to it. That's why you're so busy all the time. Huh. Like when you get a job, full time, like that. For sure, we'll be not busy then. It's bad, man. It does.
coming. As was advertised, this is a Microsoft open source talk. This is Lily. She's a principal software engineer manager. I think I got that right.
Hello, everyone.
With Microsoft working in open source, and this is John Kordich, and he also works there. And without further ado,
I'm a senior engineer.
Senior engineer.
I wish I were principal.
Sorry. My bad. There are great people.
It's my responsibility to promote you into principal sometime later.
So without further ado, I'll let them take it away.
Hello, everyone. So John and I are very happy to give a talk here in UIUC. We feel very honored. So this presentation previously was arranged as a workshop. To give you the right expectation, we will not have a workshop because when we prepared this talk, we discussed and then we feel that if you're really interested in the source code, you can find a lot of online course from online, but then you cannot get the unique experience or opinion or perception from us. So I think it's better use this time to tell you our personal stories. So hopefully it will make you to think better at least than us when we are just enter this industry world from fresh. So today our talk will be from close to open, a journey with Microsoft. So I entered Microsoft about 17 years ago, just like you. And I still remember that the first day I came to Microsoft, and then the first event I entered is this Microsoft new employee orientation. And on that day, I got a letter. And then on that letter, it says something like this: please don't use open source. But if you have to, you'd better get approval from a VP from Microsoft. Fast forward to 2018. I saw this news. Microsoft has acquired GitHub for $7.5 billion in stock. We may ask, what happens in the past 17 years? Why do things got changed so dramatically? What a difference 17 years can make. To me, of course, you can see I got lots of stickers. So every time Windows got released, I got one sticker. And I got patents, as you can imagine, a lot of patents as well. And also, I got a huge, big crystal stone there. You can see it's very tall, very heavy. And then, it's actually good exercise for me because we pretty much do office move pretty frequently. As you can imagine, right? I have to pack it up carefully. I have to carry it from one office to another. And sometimes my colleague and I joked, oh, we really prefer a check with Bill Gates' signature on it rather than this stupid big crystal stone. But yeah, so this is just for me, right? So maybe someone really appreciate it. But other than that, I actually have learned a lot during the past 17 years. And I would like to use today's opportunity to share with you all the personal stories in Microsoft in the past 17 years. So what did Microsoft look like back in 2001? Beautiful campus. Yeah, it's amazing to me when I first come to Microsoft. So whenever I got blocked or I don't have an idea during the programming, I will just go outside and then wandering in the campus. Most of the cases, or all the cases, all the issues just go away. I calm down and I think of a stock solution, a beautiful solution will come up. 17 years passed, nothing changed. Still, very beautiful campus. So welcome to Microsoft. Hopefully one day you can join us. Now let's switch to the software development. So as a junior software developer, I have to say it's an eye-opening experience for me. Think about this. Thousands, 5,000 actually developers every day work together, checking code all together. And then this code need to work together, need to first integration, and then make sure functionality all work, there is no regression. There are lots of things backend to guarantee that happens We use a source control system called source depot. We have very strict integration process from reverse integration to the forward integration. We have all the milestones, beta and then RTM, release to manufacture. And then we have this great wall ship room. You may ask, what wall ship room? Why it's called wall? Because as you can imagine, there are lots of fights there first, right? And then also it's closed. It's in the very closed room. So pretty much whenever it's close to the final release, people will ask you to present the bug you're trying to fix, why you need to fix it, what's the problem for our issues. They will go to line by line for the fix that you present, and then trying to find out all the potential holes and the issues in that. And then even sometimes your fix is perfect, it still got rejected, because still there is a concern that there might be something that people cannot understand right now, regress the functionalities. During all this process, I can guarantee you, working in Microsoft, working in Windows, definitely make me to become a very solid system designer. A very unique experience I will carry on with me, no matter where we are going forward. Okay, let's go to a little bit details. In 2004, as a junior dev, I involved into a project most of you may heard about called Windows Vista. Okay, if you ask me my experience there, I can tell you chaos. Okay? I don't know, if the feature important, if the bug critical, if it's blocking anything. I still remember that one day my manager told me to say, hey Lee, I gave you this critical bug. I trust you. And it needs to be fixed in 3 days. Say, wow, it's really important. Let's jump it in. And then I debug and then look at it and then find out, wow, actually it's a really big feature. The bug, the reason why it happens is because in multimedia pipeline, by the way, at that time I'm a multimedia platform developer, we don't have any format change support. If you know multimedia a little bit, if you play MPEG-4, sometimes the song itself can change from one format to another. To continuously play the song or video, you need to handle format change. And then back then, in our pipeline, we don't have any format change support. Think about it, how big this bug is. It took me about a month, eventually, to add that feature, and then another month to stabilize it. So, to me, there is no planning at all, and then no one knows what's going on there. So from that experience, I learned 2 things, actually, from Vista. I think it will be quite useful for you as well going forward. Number 1, the code needs to be fully tested before it got checked in. Okay? If you don't test your code, you will not know what will not work. And then if you assume lots of things, any other things built on top of your code will be crashed after that. Secondly, planning is super critical for big software development. If you don't have a right planning, you will see chaos definitely after that. The good thing about Vista, the bright side is I got my first patent after that. Okay, time continues. Now it goes in 2007, where Windows 7 came. I became a tech lead during that time. Based on my experience in Vista, I know how important the code quality is. I know how important the planning is. So as a tech lead, the first thing I ask for anyone who work on my project to say, hey guys, we need a unit test. Any code you check in, you have to have a test to go together, else I would not allow you to check in. Second thing I do is I do prototype. I try to find out what the technical blocking issues are, and then reserve proper resource and then time to solve it during the development phase. Turns out, it works pretty well. The Win 7, all the features are very, very smooth during its integration time. So I learned that planning really need good prototyping. And then next, since I drive all the integration during that time, I know that project success also relies on collaboration. It's definitely not a one-person's job. You need to have a good team members to work together with you. You guys need to build trust during that time. And then some of the team members, believe me, when you work well, you will become friends, maybe lifetime friends sometimes. And then one of the friends I made in Win7 called Matthew Maitre, who is a graduate student from UIUC actually. That's why I insist that I have to come to here to see who they are, who you are. Okay, in Win7, it's a 2007. How many of you know Bill Gates? Okay, all of you. I can tell you a personal story here. So Bill Gates actually did this office walk for every big release. If you knew him very well, you will know that he actually retired from Microsoft in 2008. That's right the time that we released Win7. And then, as a tradition, that's the last time he will do this office walk to talk to developer directly, to ask you, hey, what the project you're doing, can I see your demo? So every team you can imagine, they want to just give the best impression ever to Bill Gates. So they will try to find the best project they can present to them. And then fortunately, my project was selected. So I actually prepared this demo for Bill Gates. I'm so nervous. I was so excited as well. And then, you know, one thing I really, really want is his signature. But even though I'm very close to him, show his demo, answer his question, I really didn't have courage to ask his signature still. Okay, one thing I learned that getting a person's signature do need courage. Okay, time still, you know, going forward. Now we enter 2009, and then we enter this Windows 8 time. I became dev lead to make a decision on lots of important things. For example, whether this feature is needed, why we need it, who will use it. And then I have a responsibility to make sure that I allocate correct resources on a project. And then, during that time, one thing I find is really, really hard is the user requirements. Being closed system, I have no way to gather requirements from anyone, because it has to be secret, right? You want to compete with others. All your features are secret features. So it randomly just by guess. Okay, at that time, the feature I did is a capture pipeline. And then we make this a very secret, we call it SOC device at that time, trying to add a lot of interesting functionality into that device from scratch. One thing I worked on is actually capture driver inside our camera, put it that way, into that device. At that time, we already decided we are going to have a front and then back cameras for that device. But one thing we are not clear, should we also add USB camera for that device? Why? We debate and debate. Actually, this debate goes all the up, even to the VP of the product. And then still, we don't know. We don't know the answer. And then eventually, the answer was got by one incident. We find out the USB camera based on USB 3.0 at that time. But that implementation for that protocol is super new, so it keeps crashing. So even we want to release it, we couldn't. So now the answer is simple, right? We cannot put any USB camera, period. And then turns out, no one complains. That means the user is pretty happy with just a front and then back camera. And then if you think about, yeah, who is going to have a phone with a USB camera and then carry it over all over the place? It doesn't make sense. But simple question like this, we cannot get answer being closed. Supposedly, if it's open, that is easy, right? You put up some survey, ask like somebody like you, do you need a front, back, and also USB camera? Maybe issue got solved. But being closed, we don't have luxury. So that's what I learned. Like being closed, we have a conflict there. You need the requirements, but you cannot get requirements. Now things continue going forward. We enter Windows 10 in 2014. Now I really found my dilemma. The code name for Windows 10 called Windows Threshold. You can think about it, why it's called threshold. It means even we're going to live or we're going to die. But for me, it's also a threshold because at that time, I was trying to do some audio and video codecs. I only have about 30 developers there. But then I find online, there are tens of open source audio and video codecs. No matter how hard we work, we cannot catch all the new codecs formats coming from outside. Our player looks very media player looks ridiculous because you can only play the old kind of formats or the new one, like the ones you guys like. We cannot support because we simply cannot compete with outside world anymore, just with the 30 devs in-house. And then the next question is, even let's say we build it in-house, what our release cadence should like? If we really release fast enough, how we can guarantee the quality? All of these questions, I just simply cannot find in Windows. I have to look something outside. Should I quit Microsoft at that time? Maybe. I do think about it during that time. Luckily, when I look outside, just outside Windows, I found something else actually already started happening in Microsoft. Emerging cloud. Azure. Microsoft Cloud Platform, if you heard about it, it got announced in 2008. At the very beginning, all the VMs, virtual machines on that cloud is Windows. But in 2007, more than 40% of the VMs on Azure are Linux already. Think about it, how Linux pretty much quickly gained the hearts from Microsoft. That's why our CEO, Satya, in 2014, officially announced Microsoft loves Linux. We have to, right? 40% of VMs on Azure right now are Linux. How could we not love Linux if you think about it? So to me, the answer is simple. Microsoft already provided me a platform to understand Linux, understand open source. I need to embrace that platform. So I joined the cloud in 2016. I was amazed by the whole different culture. They have a quick deployment, they have a quick failure experiment, and then they have a quick improvement. And the culture there really very supportive and then collaborate. Why? Because during the fast development, you cannot build everything from scratch. You have to rely on someone else. So it's very supportive and collaborate because of the nature. And then people have to be open-minded, of course. If you want to use anything for open source, you need to look not just inside Microsoft, but outside Microsoft as well. And then to understand their technology so that you can bring in to use or build things on top of it. And also, because of all the open-minded, they're very collaborative. The culture is that we have to build is inclusion and then diversity. And I'll give you an example. This is a picture I have with our senior VP called Scott Guthrie, who pretty much in charge of all the cloud platform in Microsoft. In cloud organization, we have a special event just for women. Okay? In that event, pretty much you have a room like this. It's not like a line rows of tables, but a round table. So pretty much you sit there, and then Scott Guthrie pretty much will go around the table, sit with you, listen to what your concerns, what your issues, and then try to solve all those issues with you for female employee. Why, you may ask, why female employee is so important? Because as a diversity, we need a different view of our software. And then sometimes in man-domained software industry, female opinion could be easily ignored. You will find that even in meetings, sometimes you say something, people just simply ignore you. But in Microsoft, in cloud, they try to change this. They will think, and then they will let you talk, and then listen to you, and then solve the issues for you. So for my team called Enterprise Open Source Group, we are working on a lot of open source projects, actually, in the past 2 years since I joined. So I call them two types of open source projects. One is, I call it inside out. That means we build something inside Microsoft, And then we're trying to share it out as open source so anyone else in the industry can use it. So one example we have is the Linux PowerShell. I don't know how many of you have been using PowerShell on Windows, but it's a very good command line too. And then now we share it as an open source for Linux as well. So if you use a Linux system, you can also use a PowerShell as well. So those are the projects actually comes from my team. And then the other kind of open source project, I call it outside in. What that means is the industry has already a lot of very popular open source projects. Microsoft just also contribute to that project so that project will be better, not just for Microsoft, but also other industry companies as well. So one of the things we really work with lots of big names there, Docker, Cloud Foundry, Mesos, and DCOS. So when I say we contribute, let's take a closer look. We are not just surface contribution, we really contribute. So in the past year, for example, we commit about 1,000 commits. You can see that it's about many, many lines of changes there. And then we even attend Mesos and DCOS conference last year in September. We host our booth and then trying to answer all the customers' issues for open source projects. Okay, so now you know that Microsoft really changed. Actually, the open source has become de facto software development model. Why I'm saying that? Because Microsoft is actually based on GitHub status today. It is #1 contributor to the open source community. It is better than Facebook or even Google. Okay, that's the current list of the things. So if people still think Microsoft is a closed system, think it twice. Okay, so I think this is something I really, really want to say. Microsoft is the company I truly respect because it is not only give me the training that I need generously, it also provide me a platform that I need for my growth. And also, it because all the amazing people I work with, like John. And then finally, most importantly, I think because the courage, the persistence, it shows me during this transformation from closed to open. It becomes so mature, rational, open-minded, and I think it will be successful for any of us going forward. It's a great company. Okay, now let's embrace the open. I'll go give the open source culture and then the introduction to my colleague, John Kordich. Please join me to welcome John Kordich. There is another one.
Oh, is there? Okay, let's do.
Two.
I don't know how this works. Where's this one going? Thanks, Lee. Okay, where does it? Should be right here?
Yeah.
Cool. Oh. I think I almost got it. Okay. Excellent. Okay, cool. I'm connected. Hey, everyone. Okay, so let's see what we got next. Awesome. It's my slides. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to stop, raise your hand. I'd be glad to answer. All right, so I wanted to take this in a slightly different direction and talk a little bit about open source and culture from like a high level. So this is a little outside of Microsoft, but just applies to open source community in general. Where does open source fit in my life? Well, you probably all use a lot of open source. A lot of open source software. You might have even contributed to a lot of it. The internet is built on top of open source software. Anytime you go to a website, you're probably interfacing somehow with some open source libraries or software. I find it hard to tell students that they should contribute to open source because you all are probably still looking for jobs. When you contribute to open source, unless you're doing it on behalf of a company, you're probably doing it as a donation. But I think it's still worthwhile. Let's step back for a bigger picture. There's kind of like a public cultural commons that we've created as humans, like as the entire world. And we've produced this just an amazing amount of art, music, writing, video, an amazing amount of knowledge, an amazing amount of analysis too. The internet's enabled this. We can collaborate together, we can create just so much amazing stuff and share it with each other. Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, Twitter, YouTube, people post things to these sites that we all enjoy. We get deep enjoyment from these things. I laugh all the time at some amazing writing on Twitter. YouTube videos enrich my life. Some of them don't, but a lot of them do. Okay. Stack Overflow, I always come across bugs I've never seen before. I use Stack Overflow all the time for insights that I might never have figured out. Wikipedia, come on, Wikipedia. Who doesn't use Wikipedia? Okay. I'd like to submit to you that contributing to open source is being as amazing as people who produce this amazing content online. You're producing open source software that the whole world uses, and it's pretty incredible stuff. It might not be as glamorous as being the most famous person on YouTube, but I think it's pretty glamorous in its own way. And I think you should feel proud if you contribute to it. All right, just a little bit of a problem. We're becoming more connected. We've developed amazing tools for collaborating. There's GitHub, for example. A little plug in there for Microsoft. There's so much potential to produce amazing work, but at the same time, it's easier than ever to be awful to people. I'm sure everyone has experienced flaming or trolling on the internet. Toxic behavior can really poison motivation and destroy a community or team. Even just a few people, they can ruin culture in a team or a project. There is good news. Culture can and does change. Let's consciously think about what we want our culture to become. Every time we make a decision to communicate with someone or produce something on the internet, we're changing culture. It might take a long time, it might not be that effective, but I think everyone's choices actually does affect things. We all shape culture every day in everything we do. If an open source project is going to succeed, it really needs to inspire people to collaborate. And sometimes that inspiration is monetary. Not everyone wants to do the worst stuff for an open source project, and sometimes people get paid for it, and it's great. Okay, collaborative behavior. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what kind of choices you can make when you're contributing to open source or communicating with people in open source that can actually enhance collaboration. Reaching out to people in projects that interest you. Sometimes just saying hi to someone can actually get you integrated to it or enable things that you never would have thought possible. Be social, have fun. That's hard to say because a lot of us are introverts. At least I am in a lot of ways, but I try to push myself out of it. But we all need friends. We're all human, and sometimes reaching out to people can really make friends. And it's really awesome, actually. There's amazing people I've met on our team. I consider we're almost like a family, actually. But we have a lot of really great friends I've made. So another thing you can do is take lots of notes about your work and share them with people. I almost forget everything unless I write it down. My brain is completely fried using the internet my whole life. I have to take notes. Be accurate with the words you use when you communicate with people. Imagine that you're writing a science paper whenever you comment on someone's work. Practice kindness and patience. I think this is a general law that I think everyone should follow in life. If you're kind with people and patient with people, you will go so far. You have no limits for the most part. Someone's work can be really personal to them. So if you ever comment on someone's work, don't insult them or their work. Gently suggest better solutions. I think you have a responsibility to improve upon things, but also there's a right way of going about it. Depression and anxiety are extremely common in this era. So many people suffer alone deeply in their own thoughts. A kind interaction can greatly improve someone's life. This is even more so in open source community. There are a lot of programmers that are deeply depressed. Being kind to them can really make their lives better. This is an example of what not to do. And interesting enough, I'll talk about it at the end, but this is an email from Linus Torvalds, who's creator of Linux. He's well known for being pretty abrasive in his comments. That's kind of funny, but at the same time, like, I mean, you can read what he says, but if I were a kid, I'd think it's really funny. But actually, like, I think this is really dangerous for an open source community. It can really push people away, especially if you're, if you're contributing with your team. In fact, like where you work, this could ruin culture on a team. In fact, interestingly enough, I made these slides just a few weeks ago, and as of 5 days ago, Linus Torvalds apologized for all of the abuse and words that he used before. So. Pretty amazing, actually. I'm kind of amazed that he apologized, which is really good. I'm glad. You can read if you want a link to his apology letter, I'll send it to you. You can search for it. I think it was on Hacker News. You can find it. So yeah, language like this can be rewritten. I strongly recommend editing your own writing before you publish it. You can greatly improve upon the language as well, because I mean I think he probably makes some wonderful points here, but I think there's a way to improve that, to make it more clear without insulting someone. Okay, so collaborative behavior part 2. You can learn about microaggressions and how to avoid making them. Like microaggressions, if you haven't heard of it before, it's actually really hard. I'm not the best person to describe it, but read about it. You can learn how to not make them. It can probably improve your behavior of the people around you and uplift people too by simply learning to listen to people and not dismiss them, and yeah. So yeah, respect and listen to the opinions of others on the project. Even if you think their opinions are worthless, even if you think, it's important to listen to people. I think they might actually know something that you don't, even if you think you know everything. I don't think I know anything, so it works that way. All right, so you ask people's opinions for your own behavior too, and be willing to adapt to others. So I think to be a responsible person in a culture, and in this case open source culture, it's good to find out if the things you're saying are hurtful to people. You can ask them, and sometimes they might not feel comfortable answering you, but if you give them the right environment, they might actually tell you, like, you said something that hurt my feelings or whatever. And that, if you can process these things, collaboration usually increases and people will feel more motivated. If someone feels unlistened to and unrespected, they won't want to contribute to this project, whatever you're working on. And that's not good for your project and genuinely for people too. If you regret something you've done, be open about your regret and apologize to those that you've wronged. Accept forgiveness if they offer it. Or yeah, if they offer it. So, you can't always ask for forgiveness. Some things you can't be forgiven for, but a lot of things you can. And sometimes it's not good to ask for forgiveness, but accepting it if someone gives it is probably worthwhile. With a healthy community attitude, your project may attract people who have not felt included in the open source world in the past. I think that's good for everyone. We really want to include as many people as we can in these projects that we're working on. We get many different perspectives. It's like what Lee was talking about earlier with diversity and inclusion. It really matters a lot. Okay, so you might be wondering, at least when I was a student, to be honest, I never thought I'd be working in programming. I thought I'd actually end up doing like some sort of graduate work in like math or something. But I ended up working in computer programming, and I was really happy. I love being a software engineer. It's actually really fulfilling work. How can you contribute? I had no idea how to contribute to open source when I was a student. There's actually a lot of things you can contribute on where you don't even need to program. If you love some software, you can contribute to it regardless. Even your family members, people who have no training, like especially with language. So like if you're a native language speaker, you can absolutely proofread, copy edit, and edit things, like substantive editing. So like if something doesn't flow, you can submit changes to this. Like on GitHub, it's very easy to modify a document, submit a pull request, and a lot of the times people will just flat out accept it. Multilingual speakers, if you speak more than one language, You can do amazing translation work. There's so many people out there that want translation. And you can donate this. You can do amazing work and introduce like some open source project to some, some other country. People who have never spoke that language can now speak it, or can now use this project in another language. Localization, similar to translation, except it's like, embedded stuff in the actual software itself. Like so, I'm sure you guys have experienced localization. You install software, it asks you what language you want to install it in, you choose. And that's what you would be doing. Okay, organization. Another way to contribute is you can communicate with the devs on the project and schedule regular meetings. A lot of open source, not all of them, but a lot of open source projects are very unorganized. And it's hard to pin down exactly what should happen unless the maintainer themselves, if it's one person, says like, this is what's gonna happen. It's good to get a lot of devs sign off on things. So if you want a change to go in, you want to communicate with those devs regularly and say like, hey, will you accept this? And they'll tell you ahead of time whether it's okay or not and whether you need to make changes. And having regular meetings is a great place to talk about this. For the organization, if you're an organized person, you can work with the devs to come up with agenda items and take minutes during the meetings. If you want to contribute, one of the best ways is just be a user. Use the project and complain a lot. So, if you, I'm sure many of you use like Chromium or any type of open source, and you've hit a bug before. Complaining is always good because complaining gets turned into issues, and then eventually devs assess it. Okay, how can I contribute to open source part 2? Infrastructure. This is so useful for open source or any type of software development project. Set up a CI/CD system. CI/CD is continuous integration or continuous deployment, or it can mean a lot of things. But basically, it's like you have something like Jenkins or some other tool that will take any changes that people submit, build it, run the tests, and then return a result or deploy it on a system or whatever. You can configure to do many different things. Setting up something like that or helping people set up could be extremely useful for open source. It's kind of like you can create a gate before source can go in to maintain code integrity, which is good if you have a lot of people working on a project. Another thing you can do is you administer permissions. So like if people leave the project or join it, you can give them permissions for whatever protected data there is that you might need. Another great way you can contribute, argument. Just make some good arguments. You can give respectful opinions and arguments to the community. There's usually email lists. You can join those and just give your opinions. You could do it, I think, a little bit better than the way Linus did it, I hope. Build engineering. You can improve the build process for a project. So, this doesn't get a lot of, I never studied build engineering when I was in college, but if you learn something like GNU Make, a lot of people still use GNU Make. There's CMake, which is, it really allows you to do some cross-platform. It translates like build descriptions into whatever type of build engine you want. So, you write CMake and it gets translated into like GNU Make, or it gets translated into a VS project for Visual Studio, and so on. CMake's pretty amazing, actually. It's just quite annoying to use right. You'll learn if you study it, you can learn it. But it's a great way to contribute because no one likes doing build engineering. You can make a whole career out of build engineering. Triage. Work with others to determine the severity and priority of open issues. So, there's a lot of open issues for open source projects. You can talk about, you talk with devs and say like, hey, how severe is this? Usually crashes are pretty severe. Close duplicate issues. Boring work. No one wants to do it. Organize related issues and sort out issue dependencies. Some people love that. I don't. Okay, how can I contribute to open source part 3? Release planning. So you can work with devs to plan when releases come. And here's software engineering. This is the fun stuff. This is what you guys go to school for. At least I did. Not everyone does, of course. You don't actually have to, and that's what's amazing actually about open source. You don't have to have a degree to contribute to open source. Anyone can do anything. Just go on there and submit a pull request on GitHub or submit patches somewhere, run software, improve things. Feature design, feature implementation. So yeah, feature design isn't even actually, you're not even writing code here usually. You might write a prototype, but you're gonna write a document and you submit the document to a bunch of people and all the devs or anyone on the mailing list, and they'll give you their opinions. and then they'll sign off or they don't. And that's actually a really great way to get started in open source if you want to add a new feature to something. It's a great way to get sign off. If you get people to agree to a document ahead of time, it's easier to hold it to them later. All right, piecing together APIs and CLIs. That's actually probably, like, as a software engineer, that's probably one of the most common coding things that you'll be doing. It doesn't sound very fun, but it becomes pretty fun. You'll probably pull out your hair a little bit, but it's not that bad. You know, there's a lot of APIs out there, a lot of CLIs. Sometimes you just got to get multiple things working together. Debugging, that's probably at least my favorite thing about software development. Find a bug, go deep within things, try to set up repro environments. Refactoring, I don't like that either, but a lot of, you know, it's really important. You don't want a lot of duplicate code. You want things, you know, lined right, etc. Code reviews, always awesome. Always have people look over your code because it's very easy to mess up. And it's way better to catch it ahead of time before it gets checked in, way better. Another thing you can do, follow up with people who've committed to a task. There's a lot of the time, people will commit to something and they'll just disappear. I'll have to admit I've done that a few times for a few open source projects. I feel bad, but no one followed up with me. If they did, I might have actually completed the thing I signed up for because I would have felt bad about it. But then I just ignored it. All right, so something else you can do, donate. Hey, I don't like to tell students to donate time, or donate money. They can donate time. I mean, that's basically all of these other ways to contribute. You can donate lots of time. You know, coffee, if you have coffee and food, absolutely. Little smiley face. All right, so let's get started. Where do you begin? I didn't know when I was in college. I had no idea how to begin working on open source. You know, how do you find one? I'm sure you all use open source. There you go. If you want to contribute, you know, just find the mailing list for the open source or find the GitHub project and talk to someone. Everyone wants help. There's so many people out there that would love any of your help. Or you can even start your own project. You know, I'm sure a lot of people, you know, there's amazing tools for automation out there. You can start your own open source project that just connects to some website and downloads some data and, you know, packages it or pieces it together, and it's just a small little script. You can start your own tiny little project like that, and it can grow from there. You know, so some amazing stuff you can do there, actually. Some small little projects that people will find really useful. You know, GitHub's a great way to get started. Like I said, it's an amazing tool. Like I said earlier, you can join meetings, chat rooms, forums, email lists. Just listen in. That's a great way to get started too. If it's intimidating, you know, just listening in on what people are talking about can be a great way to learn about that. All right, so you can ask for a mentor. Lots of open source projects will say they have people assigned to be mentors for people, and you just say, hey, I want to get started, but I don't know where to start. Can you give me some time? And they'll find someone who can give you time, and they'll chat with you, and maybe make a friend. A lot of us are very friendly. Way to contribute, definitely read the contributing document. There's usually a contributing document for any open source project. Don't submit a patch before reading it, or you might get yelled at. So, you know, use the project, read its documentation, think about how it can be made better, and then make it better. That's open source for you. So, if you're interested in learning more, send us emails. Here's our emails. This alias is also my GitHub. You can find me here. And that's it. Q&A, questions. It's done. Yes?
Is open source a separate section in Microsoft, or do all developers within Microsoft work on open source?
Lee could probably answer this better than I can.
Yeah, so there is kind of two kind of open source related. One is a focused open source group like us. The other one is that each team have their developers. Some developers work on the closed objects, some of them work on the open projects. So it's not like technically, oh, we are the only one. Every department, every organization have their open source. For example, .NET, right? You know .NET is open source. It's coming from the, we call it the Visual Studio team. So we have this always cool Visual Studio tools.
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit. You know, my team a few years ago, actually I think it was about 4 years ago, we were working on System Center tools, which you probably have never seen because it's like IT administrator stuff that uses that software. They're all this Linux and Unix software to enable System Center Operation Center and System Center Configuration Manager to work on Linux and Unix. All of that was closed source for a very long time, and we open sourced all of it. So I think probably a lot of other teams are like that too. Like Microsoft really, you need a good reason for something to stay closed source basically at Microsoft. In fact, it's really hard to get a closed source, basically a private repo on GitHub, unless you have to give permission for it basically.
So I want to add it on, technically, and just the point that Microsoft trying to open source lots of things if possible. The delivery that Microsoft will be being Microsoft, you may not realize that it's actually a really good target. Lots of people, if Microsoft is not being careful enough, lots of people find a reason to sue Microsoft. So all the open source license, different variety of license is actually havoc for Microsoft.
Yeah.
So I think that's something like sometimes prevent Microsoft, I would say, moving faster to open source world is because of that. Because it's so vulnerable target for people to be able to pursue. So we need to be very, very careful.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to submit a patch to some other open source project working at Microsoft, like what would you have to do to get permission to do that?
That's a good question. It really depends. If it's just a random open source project, I can probably do it right now as long as I'm not putting any Microsoft's patents out there. But some organizations have contributor license agreements, so I'd have to agree to that. And usually, I actually don't fully know. I would talk to the lawyers at Microsoft. I'd send them an email or my manager and say like, hey, would this be okay if I submit patches here? And they'll go over, they'll have the lawyers go over the contributor license agreement and make sure that I can do that.
In general, Microsoft open source project, they want you to link your GitHub account with your Microsoft alias so that they know that it's contribution from Microsoft. So that means if you use your GitHub to submit something, it will have some Microsoft representation there. So you need to be a little bit careful. If you're not sure, the good thing is Microsoft have lots of lawyers, and then you can send them an email, and then very quickly you will get a response from them. So as I said, the reason you need to be cautious is not because we don't want you, open source Microsoft don't want you, it's because there is lots of potential issues follow up if you're not be careful enough.
Yep. And Microsoft has a lot of really great resources for developers, and the legal team is one of them. So if you ever have any legal questions related to your work, obviously not related to your personal life, they'll help you.
Yeah, we can use another session to talk about all the Microsoft benefits.
Oh yeah, actually there is a legal group that helps you with your personal issues too. So.
Yeah, whenever you have an argument with your neighbor, you can call your lawyer.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yep. So, before I worked at Microsoft, I never thought Microsoft would hire someone like me. But I think Microsoft and tech companies in general very much value people who can collaborate well. If you can work well on a team and you can really listen to people and understand their perspectives, you can actually do really well. Even if you're not the most talented programmer in the world,
Yeah, and then Microsoft in general is very, I feel like it is company very generous actually. They treat people like people, and then they actually care a lot about how to improve people per se. For example, we work for the open source group, enterprise open source group. The company support us to a conference that you like to go to at least once a year for free. So pretty much they will reimburse lots of, your learning you want to learn by yourself. Of course, your talk or speaker like this, right? Your company will all support you as well. So it's very generous, I think.
yes?
How has the open source culture changed at Microsoft after the recent acquisition of GitHub?
Good question. Do you want to answer?
I think the change, as I mentioned in my slides, starting from actually cloud platform. Sometimes we call it a cloud culture in Microsoft itself, right? Like it's definitely not from Windows culture, because Windows is more like a closed and everything you have to start from scratch because you cannot rely on anyone else. Cloud is opposite, totally opposite. You have to find lots of things so that you can build upon it and then develop more quickly. So I think those things are starting, little by little, people realize that we need actually more supportive, more collaborative, and then we need to be really contribute to this great community environment rather than be a single hero there, right? We need a lot of this community environment. And the GitHub is a huge community for developers. And then Microsoft is also a family for developers like us. So I think those two things got together is a very natural conclusion for Microsoft. Like, we need an open source developer community to be part of this family. And then we want to be that community as well. So that's what happens eventually.
We have a lot of, over the years we get, more, we hire new hires all the time, and young people are very familiar with open source. So over the years, like as we get more younger, and well, not younger, but just as we get new hires, we get people from open source community all the time. So we're kind of integrating open source culture into Microsoft by hiring in too. So it's both from within and from outside. Any other questions?
Yeah, any other questions?
We could do like one more.
One more question?
Yeah, we have time for the last one.
Yeah?
All right. So Lily, do you ever submit to open source projects that follow your passion, like Microsoft's exciting open source multimedia initiatives like Opus or AV1?
Once I transit to open source, not yet. We do a lot of in-house build codecs and independent view codecs. But after I transfer to the open source project, we are very, very busy for all the cloud-based technology. I don't have time to go back to multimedia yet. But hopefully one day, my both passion can meet together, and then I start contributing back to my old familiar fields going forward. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you guys for coming. They have their, they put their emails up